Gentlemen, please. This is a tough bunch, so give a hand to our alleged musical talent. File in there and we'll get their names and addresses and all the statistics. Okay, welcome to our annual expert panel. This year consisting of musical talent. And we're going to go from, pass the baton down. And I'd like everybody to introduce themselves and tell us who they are and a few words about their philosophies or whatever they want to say. Gentlemen, please.
First, well, it's great to be here with friends and everybody. I'm Dan Gabel from Boston, Mass, and I've been with the Glenn Miller Orchestra since 2008, several tours and everything. I love Glenn Miller music. I'm here in capacity as a sideman with the great Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, but it was great to spend some time with the scholarship winners. I also serve in a capacity as the president of the American Big Band Preservation Society, and that work in preserving this music is near and dear to all of our hearts. And for 1 week every year, Clarinda, Iowa becomes Big Band Central, so it's great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Bush, and I'm the current music director of the one and only Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. This is my very first trip to Clarinda, Iowa, so I'm enjoying it, and I too have been a veteran of many of the big bands. I started with the Glenn Miller Orchestra back when the year started with the 19, so we don't really have to get that historical now, do we? But served for a number of years with the great Buddy Morrow, led Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and many of the other great big bands. Spent time with the Cab Calloway Orchestra, the Count Basie Orchestra. So I guess I like the big bands, and I'm looking forward to today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kevin Sheehan from Chicago, Illinois, Tinley Park, South Suburb. June 7th, I just celebrated my 29th anniversary with the band, Glenn Miller. I've been on the band more than half of my life, actually. Anyway, love the music. It's great to be here and enjoy the Battle of the Bands tonight. It'll be a lot of fun.
My name is Nick Hilscher. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and let's see. I'm honored to be up here. I've got all friends up here with me, and we are friends, Kevin. I'm going to let you more of that later. Kevin started in 1997. Jeff, you started with the Glenn Miller Orchestra in 97, 96, and so when I joined in 1998. Kevin was there. Jeff was on his last month with the band, and Greg Parnell, who joined in '96 as well, was with the orchestra too. So I sang with the orchestra essentially from 1998 until 2005, and then returned as the music director in January of 2012, and held that office, I guess, officially until the end of 2020 or August of 2021. And so it is great to be here. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Eric Stabnau. I'm the music director of the Glenn Miller Orchestra. Picked up after Nick Hilscher in the early 2020s. And before that, I joined in 2017. June 2nd was my 9th anniversary. So I've been here many times, and it's exciting to be back.
My name is Greg Parnell. I met some of you yesterday. As Nick said, I joined in '96, so I've been here on and off for 30 years. It's always great to come back to Clarinda. I was a member of the band until 2004, and that's when I started working in our office in Orlando for Glenn Miller Productions. So, happy to be here once again.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Now, we're going to open up questions for every one members of the band, and you can ask, or excuse me, of the panel, and ask what you want of which. We have a traveling microphone in the audience. We'll pass around so we can hear what the questions are. If my erstwhile helper can get to where the person is. So with that, let's open it up. Any questions to get started? Bill?
Mike, I think except for Eric, all of you in the band served under, I think all of you in the band served under Larry O'Brien as leader, except for Eric. I'd like to ask each of you, what's one thing you learned to do as a leader from working for Larry O'Brien?
Okay, yeah, so Larry was great. He was the music director for 25 years, or how many years that was. He did a great job. We all learned a lot from Larry. But, really it was, for me, about getting on the bandstand and giving your best every single night. That's one of the main things we learned from Larry. And actually, I just saw Larry in October. He's doing great. He's 93, and it was great to see him.
It's almost unfair to ask what's one thing, because even the most important, it's hard to put it in order. Larry had learned from the previous generation, and we learned directly from him. And for me, programming a show. I thought that he was a very good program. He did a great job of programming a show. As far as a variety of music, you have 2 hours to essentially tell a story, and it needs to start a certain way, and it needs to have an arc to it. And I thought that he did a great job of doing it.
When I first joined, Larry was very hard on me. He demanded a lot, and his expectations of me were higher than I ever thought I could reach. He would post the set list in the front of the bus, and when it came time for sound check or the gig, you had to be ready. And he would let you know if you weren't ready. In so many words, he would pull me aside, some 4-letter words on occasion. But he was very strict, not strict, but we became friends over the years, and I keep in touch with him every couple of months. But he's doing well, and that was his thing. I met his expectations.
I want to insert something regarding Kevin. My first month on the Glenn Miller Orchestra in 1998, Kevin was not there. He was touring playing baritone saxophone with Phil Collins. And but I remember we were playing an outdoor dance, and Larry said, "You think this guy who's subbing for Kevin sounds good? Just wait until Kevin comes back next month."
I probably spent, out of everybody up here, the least amount of time working with Larry. I worked on the band for about 2.5 months in the summer of '96 and about 1.5 months in '98. Larry was very gracious, sharing some specific trombone technique with me, so it doesn't necessarily have to be leadership, how he would play. Larry was certainly a disciple of the great Tommy Dorsey, lyrical, beautiful, pretty much perfect trombone playing. And he shared with me some alternate positions in the extreme high register that make the trombone easier, some things I never thought about, so he was gracious there. I was very young when I joined the Glenn Miller Orchestra. I was 19, so I was still a little bit green. But being a professional, one of the little tricks that I observed him was you never sit down in your gig pants, because when you're the leader and you turn around to conduct the band, you'll see the creases in the back of the pants. So that was some very old school wisdom that I carry this day that I learned from Larry O'Brien.
Man, I was going to talk about the trombone thing too, and that's, but I also was 19 when I joined the band, and talk about green, I had no idea about any of this. It was the first time I was on an airplane, in fact, and we flew down here, and I was really nervous because I had seen the band many times as a kid, starry-eyed kid. It's like the best thing I'd ever heard, and Tom Dorsey Orchestra too. with Jeff on it. Sorry, I'm not trying to.
No, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, but Larry could not have been nicer when he needed to be nice and firm when he needed to be firm. But I don't want to talk too long. I love talking about Larry. He's really influential on me. I think about him all the time because for me, as a little bit younger guy, man, that connection to the big band era is really special. I treasure that, and I try to talk to him as much as I can. I still call him, but we keep in touch. And one thing I thought about recently, actually, is he said, even when you think you know the charts, you know, Pennsylvania 65000, In the Mood, whatever it is, the theme, always have the chart up, because that's part of your job. We're professionals, it's part of our job, always have the chart up. And I see George or Kevin or any of us who've been on the band for years and years and years, everybody has the chart up, because every night, play it like it's your last show. And then, I don't know, something physical about that. And the other thing I wanted to share is about tempos. They're sometimes a little different, depending on the day, different tempos for a dance, taking repeats on a dance, programming different things. Oh, look out there, Dan, those waltzers over there, they're gonna want a fast waltz, they want a V waltz. What the heck is that, a Viennese waltz? We call Waltz of the Flowers, and sure enough, there they would go. He knew he had that sense, and that's pretty special. I recently called him, I inherited the Sammy Kaye library, and he, of course, he's probably one of the last guys who worked with Sammy, so I've been talking about that. He's got these stories, and just, anyway, we all have Larry stories, and it's special, so thanks for asking that.
Yes. One. Okay.
I wondered if you might, any of you who have the context, talk a little bit about the role of Julie Rich with the band. She was a special friend to my mother, and so we have a lot of sentimental connection with her, but her role in the band was much bigger than I had at first realized. I wondered if you could comment about that.
I was telling a story about to Oliviana and her mother before we came up here on the stage. I did my junior piano recital in the fall of 1997. I was a piano performance major, and the day after that recital, I got a phone call in my dorm room, and it was this lady. She said, "My name is Julia Ridge. I'm with the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and I just got your demo tape, and I want to listen to this." And she was, I want to hear you sing live. And she was a straight shooter, and she said, you know, I have to make sure that this isn't pro-tooled, is the way she put it. And she said, "I will contact you when we're near wherever you live." And, you know, she said Georgia, Alabama, and I'll let you know, and you can come and audition live. And so a couple of months went by. I was thinking, I've been forgotten. And then she called me and came to Macon, Georgia to do my audition. And Larry O'Brien said, "Look, why don't you sing Serenade in Blue in Chicago?" And so I did the audition during the sound check. So I sing the two tunes. I go backstage, I meet with Larry. And Larry says, in his dressing room, he says, "You look great, you sound great, great suit, nice tie, your shoes are shined, you're the first on our list." And then I walk out of the dressing room, and Julia's standing there, and she says, "What did he say?" I said, "I'm the first on his list." And she went, "Come to my dressing room." And I walked into her dressing room. She shut the door, stuck out her hand, and said, "You want the job?" So she was the road manager, but she was, I think, a wonderful road manager, but she has been a dear friend all these years ever since. But that's my Julia Ridge story. It's
Wow.
really good.
Yeah, so Julie and I, for a handful of years, were the management team with the band. She was the road manager and I was her assistant. So I worked very closely with her, and she was tough at times, which was good. I needed some of that. I was booking hotel rooms for the band, and sometimes she would say, "No, I think you can find a better place." I kind of go back to work, and she was right. You work a little bit harder, you find what you're looking for. But yeah, she was always great to be around. You can laugh with her. Just a pleasure to be on the road with her for many, many years.
In 1997, I don't know if my name was passed in a hat or whatever, but I did get a call to join the band, but I still had to finish school. I had to wait a semester, and I graduated in, it was 96, and I joined in 97. But I didn't have a baritone saxophone because mine was either in a shop or something happened to it, so I had to borrow my repairman's Barry, and I had to come out within like a week or two from graduating college. I went to Northern Illinois University. So I gave her a call back, and she said, "Good news!" I'll never forget that. So anyway, my first week on the band, I was rooming with trumpet player Patrick Sheehan. And Patrick had this thing of calling people, and back then, there were really no cell phones, not per se, right? And Patrick would be on the phone with this trumpet player, Stan Mark, and they'd be talking like 2:30 in the morning. We're on the East Coast, Stan's in LA, so I couldn't sleep. Patrick kept me up all night long. And this went on for about 5 days, like my first 5 days on the band. So we're in Pennsylvania at a lunch stop. Julia pulls me aside and says, "Kevin, do we have a problem?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I can't sleep. Patrick's up all night on the damn phone, and I'm exhausted when we get into the bus," and I was new to being on the bus all the time, so I had a hard time sleeping in the bus. So I eventually moved roommates. There was one time we were in Connecticut, if you recall. He was assistant manager. He would knock on the door and get you out of bed. He'd pound the hell out of the door, and I'm Patrick with the lights on and all of this, and he wouldn't wake me up. The roommate courtesy. If the guy is still in bed 20 minutes before bus leave, rattle his cage and get him the hell out of bed. Right? But Patrick didn't do that. But Greg did, and that was the last straw. It was at a hotel in Connecticut. And Julia said, "Okay, new roommate." And anyway, Julia and I also became very good friends. And hopefully we see her in Nashville. She still lives in Nashville. Yeah. That's going to be one of our last shows prior to this upcoming break. She's a great gal, great singer. One more thing. There was a period of time, I think it was in 2000, and we had one travel day in the middle of 69 shows in a row. And Julia, she did the payroll, and back then, we didn't have direct deposit like we do now. And she was in front of the bus, and we were in Wilmington, Delaware at a Red Roof Inn. We stayed there often. And she's up till like 1 o'clock in the morning, and she's crying because overworked. And she had it all like a school teacher, marking down everything. And I patted her on the back, and she said, "Thank you."
Yes, I agree with all these wonderful stories about Julia. She in my experience working with her, that's funny you mentioned that. I hadn't thought about how there was no direct deposit, and she used to cash checks. She'd have to sign the check, and then she's there paying the check. So in addition to doing that, well, first of all, she's in charge of all these rambunctious young guys out there on the road in a bus, and she did a great job with that. She also had to deal with the finances and dealing with the buyer and collecting the fee at the end of the night, which can be a lot, to do that. And especially during a time where, the music business is still, but at that time is very much male dominated. So to have a female in charge of all that type of stuff, I have great respect for just the work that she had to do in that capacity, but certainly in the time period that she was doing it. So she was great. She remains a great friend of mine, and I have wonderful memories and ideas on Julia Rich. So that's what I have to say about her.
Same way to your kid joining the band, and after a few days, I remember she came up to me. We didn't really speak the first day, it's like all these new people. And she came up and just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You all right? You're gonna be all right." And it was very sweet. It was just I don't know, it's that little thing. I think about that, and I thought of her as just amazingly consistent. I don't know how singing on the road is really tough. Dry hotel rooms or weird climate shifts. It's hard enough to play the trombone, but just showing up and looking great, dress, makeup, and just get off the bus. We're all tired and whatever. It's like, yeah, but she's up there. People really care how you look when you're the singer or the front man. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, just one more thing. I'll close with this, and it can put a period on it. When Julia left the road, finally, permanently, she did. I think her last Japan tour with me in 2013, but she left the road and she wasn't finished. So she goes, I think, to MTSU, gets her master's degree, and she is now teaching. So she had an impact on all of us, and now she's continuing to have an impact in a positive way on all these singers coming through the system at Middle Tennessee State. So she's a remarkable woman. Thank you.
Actually, I'll add a short period to that as well. Our bass player, Ethan, joined about a month ago. He's spending his summer with the Glenn Miller Orchestra. He just finished his sophomore year. He's going to be a junior, and he asked me, "Do you know who Julia Rich is?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "She's a professor where I'm going to college right now." So he joined the band a month ago and knows Julia, and it's great.
Should go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so hearing you talk about, some of the real nuts and bolts daily life on the road, and thinking back to even Glenn Miller saying, when interviewed, there are times we let down, we travel long miles, it's night after night and everything, but then there's things that we see a new crowd and it gets us back up and whatever. It's like that's not unusual, but the thing is, even admitting it, this is Glenn Miller, is like, yeah, there are nights we get down. How do you guys deal with that? Because I know it's like, even, I'm not a musician, I'm a painter, but there's sometimes when it's just, you can't stay up here all the time. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, I'll start on this one. And I'll say that regardless of what happens on the road outside of the show itself, I think this band, this current band, and in the history of this band, I think everyone's done a great job of being extremely professional when it comes to the show. And some people have mentioned this already, but really playing the show like it's your last, or playing it as well as you can. And when you play as many shows as this band, some people might think it could become mundane, or it could become something that is not as important because you play so many. But I do have to say, everyone takes the show very, very seriously, regardless of what happens before or afterwards. There is a high level of professionalism on the stage. And people will ask, do we get tired of playing this music? Do you get tired of playing in the mood? And my answer is no, because every single night there's a new audience, and hearing the reaction of the audience members to this music like they're hearing it for the first time, genuinely, to me, does not get old. And I think most people who've been on this band would probably experience the similar thing. So regardless of what may happen outside of the show itself, the show is really a special place that I think everyone does enjoy and really performs that way.
And Eric actually is a great example of that. Every time I see him, no matter what's going on in his life, he walks on that stage, turns around, and there's that smile, and he's just ready to deliver that show. So, great job, Eric. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for me, you know, being on the road, you can go through periods where you might get burnt out. You know, it is in the mood night after night. So then you have to do some psychological stuff where, like, are you going to let yourself get tired of it, or are you going to try to get on the bandstand and be better and better every single night? And once you start thinking that way, how can I be great? Then that helps you get through it and actually makes you a better musician.
That's very true. For me, I think that the bottom line was just having this absolute passion for the music and wanting to perform it. And it offsets a lot of the things that people are not aware of that are going on. You know, what the audience usually sees is what they see in that 2-hour window. You know, I remember when Larry was the leader, we had a 10-hour travel day on the bus, rolled into Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the sun's already down, you have tinted windows on the bus, you know, already, so you've not gotten a whole lot of sunlight necessarily, but I remember getting the suitcase off and taking the elevator up, and it wasn't a very nice place, and rolling that thing down the hallway and thinking, this is all I do. I put the suitcase on the bus, I take the suitcase off the bus. On the bus, I take it off the bus. But you know, having a passion about it, I was able, as the music director, was able to be kind of consumed with, okay, what will the next thing be? What will the next project be? And you know, just that love for it keeps you, you know, it makes it a happy experience.
Quincy Jones told me a long time ago. I was doing this, played his 50th anniversary music in Switzerland in 1996. And he wanted me to perform Moody's Mood for Love, the intro to that, off the Quincy Jones Juke Joint album. And we're at this rehearsal, and he's expecting me to like nail it after hearing it 3 times. I said, I need time on this. So went in the next day, and I was still kind of messing it up. I said, I'm you know, I'll be ready for a show. And he said, you always have to play each show as if it's going to be your last, because someday it will be. And I like to play games with myself sometimes on the bandstand. Like dynamics, exaggerating dynamics. And when you reach a crowd, the crowd gives back to you. So you play stronger, you play better, you play with more intensity. And one thing that I still struggle with after all these years is vibrato. It's not easy. So alto saxophone vibrato is kind of easy. Clarinet vibrato is a nightmare in some ways. Low register, mid register, high register, without sounding like a, you know, dying duck or whatever. You know? But I still struggle with that. Not really struggle, but I try to hone in on that every night. Someone mentioned here, you know, Julie Rich's singing, and, you know, dry voice, and different elevations, and geographical locations, and being sick, having a massive headache sometimes. If you've been in high altitudes and you just go low altitude, high altitude, you get this thing called altitude headache, which is really tough to get through, especially on a show. But you have to fight through it. And with all those things that I just said, when you give back, you give to the audience, and the audience gives back to you. That's that communication. And to me, that's what this music is about. The music is timeless. And here we are, after all these years. And you see young kids singing in the crowd to any tune, you know. Pennsylvania 65000 is only a few words about Chattanooga Choo Choo. And they're 10 years old, man, you know. And it like, rock on, I'm with you. And so that rapport, that's what makes me thrive on a bandstand, I think. And especially working with these great musicians. When you, to me, like the saxophone section or trombone section, it's like ingredients to a cake. And if you don't have enough flour, the cake's gonna fall apart, right? So saxophone section, I like the sax section strong, very strong, because that to me is the sound of the group, right? As well as brass, and you know what I mean. But I rely on the guys to follow me, and when that is really tight, it makes you perform better. If I answered your question, whose was it? I don't remember.
All great sage advice from veteran musicians up here, and I echo all that because being on the road, it's not for the faint of heart. It is physically, emotionally, mentally demanding. It's exhausting. You get sick, gonna happen. You don't feel well, not gonna happen. But I also believe playing music, especially music that you love, it's a natural healer. And when you get on that bandstand and you're in front of a live audience, you get energy off of those people, and it takes a lot of that away. So that helps me. I didn't always realize that as a younger musician. Now as a less younger musician, I realize that. And also, I realize, and I teach as well. I serve as coordinator of jazz studies at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I've got some of those young musicians who are thinking about a career in music. I let them know how serious it is, and also how you can quickly be replaced by someone else. So if you keep that little edge to you, you will take care of business on the bandstand. I've seen it happen, and also now is also not being one of the young guys anymore. Some of those mentors, masters are no longer with us. So we carry the spirit of those musicians with us on the bandstand. That is something that has become more and more important to me with each time, especially on different iterations of the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. If I can get some veteran musicians among some young guys, I feel like I'm perpetuating something that was given to me. We talked about Larry O'Brien, Buddy Morrow was that to me as well. So all of those things help me make it through a tough travel day when essentially if you see me in the airport, I have a big band on my back. And that's a tune that's to be released. We'll let you know about that later.
Just one little final point, I guess, and I'm going to go back. We've all been sidemen, we've all been leaders in different capacities. I'll talk about playing third trombone. That's my favorite position, actually. I always play lead trombone, I have solos. I love the third trombone book, specifically on the Glenn Miller Orchestra, because we have all of the meat notes. And night after night, it's the same tune, whatever, but there's something special about being part of a chord. And you think about, last night, I don't think I really played that note too well. Tomorrow night, I'm gonna try better. And that one moment you think about it, and it's like, oh yeah, that chord rang. Just that one quick moment. And I think it was, anybody know there's a trombone player who said this. So yeah, that guy left the business and he never was part of a chord. He didn't know what that felt like. I can't remember who said that, I'll figure that out, but boy do I get that. That's a special thing.
Tom, I got a question. And it kind of relates to vibrato being historically correct from the 40s or the band being historically accurate to what the band was playing in Glenn's day versus trying to stay contemporary or current or bring in a younger audience. Or I went down this rabbit hole with the Jimi Henderson years and listening to the Star Wars version Glenn Miller play, or Up Where We Belong. I'm still trying to find that record, and they're not on YouTube, but I know that the band was attempting to stay current, and the book gets added to, but when's the last time we added new songs? Are there any Taylor Swift tunes in the book? Is there an attempt to bring a younger audience into an art form which is on the older side with a declining audience?
I don't know who these people are.
Taylor?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. It is interesting to look at the different eras of the Glenn Miller Orchestra and see when they were attempting more modern music, the Star Wars thing you referenced. Recently, I mean in recent years and probably recent decades, I think there's been a return to sort of the original sound of the band, and nowadays our set list consists of all the big hits, and when we rotate in other music, typically speaking, it is either from the original band or maybe the Ray McKinley band, sometimes more modern things like Buddy DeFranco, or there are sometimes new songs arranged for the band, but I think the point is we kind of celebrate the original band and the original sound, and then sometimes supplement that elsewhere. And I think there is a real great response to this band and the original music. You know, for example, before we came here to Clarinda, we had a show on Thursday night in Kansas City at like their Symphony Hall. It sold like 1,700 tickets. And the band wasn't trying to do anything differently than normal. We just played the music of Glenn Miller and presented it like we do here. And I think ultimately the great thing is that is enough. People love this music, they recognize this music, and for that reason I don't think there has been a need to kind of modernize it that way.
That's a great answer. I think that's a great answer because it is, I found it difficult to try to find something new that would work. I mean, things changed in the 60s, and that's not to downplay or you know, say groups that were now writing their music for themselves, like Paul McCartney, John Lennon. But this is an era when, you know, usually the Great American Songbook is, a lot of times you have, you know, a composer and a lyricist. And music was written in a different way. And I found it difficult to try to translate it. But like Eric says, you want it to stand on its own for what it is, and that will be the forward movement, you know, instead of trying to be relevant. And I don't think that's what you're saying, but.
Piggybacking on that, I think what's old is new again. I think the hippest thing to do for a young audience is to play, I call it the original stuff, or in a really true, authentic, honest way, because anything presented authentically is going to translate that way. And I think whether it's the Glenn Miller Orchestra, the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, or whomever tries to play, let's say, a Taylor Swift tune, I don't think that is either, and in a Glenn Miller way, I don't think that's authentic. I'm not sure if that works. That doesn't jive in a different way than, you know, McCartney and Lennon tunes and things like that. Music's written in a different way, right? It's, yeah. And I'll tell you, we have found great success in playing even just some of the Mickey Mouse bands and some of the you know, sweet band stuff. I mean, you play an old-fashioned waltz from the Jan Garber library, and I'll be darned if the kids don't dance. So, or maybe I'm just delusional.
I was just wondering if you could share any tips and tricks for being a good leader. How do you manage the musicians' needs versus the audience's needs? Getting up to do patter and sing a song, then having to go sit back down and play, and then having to do the count off. Do you always count off the tunes the same way? How do you manage having to do so many different things at once? And what's also from the people in the chairs and the musicians' perspectives, like what do you appreciate the most in a leader? How can they be the most helpful?
I'll go first just because I had this. I had the great opportunity to learn and still learn from the greats. I think the band leader's first job is to protect the guys and gals on the stage. So try to make it a good situation so the band is feeling good. And if we're feeling good, even after a long travel day or whatever the situation is, then we can put our best foot forward. And as soon as that curtain opens or whatever it is, then your first job is to the audience. And something I remember Buddy Monroe saying, like maybe a criticism or whatever of another beloved leader, is he turns his back too much Don't turn your back on the audience. Look at the audience. Smile. So when you're conducting, watch when Eric does it. Sometimes he turns around, but usually he's looking out, right? Jeff's going to do the same thing. Tonight, well, maybe not, now that I've said that. We'll find out. But the audience is your friend. Bring them in. And I see singers do that too, closing their eyes and whatever, like a lot of pop singers. I don't think that works. I think if you're singing a ballad, sing it out like this, sing it to someone. And if that makes you nervous, look up. But bring the audience in, because then we play better. And it just, as Larry would say, it's a symbiotic relationship.
I try and make the bandstand experience for the musicians on the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra as enjoyable as possible. And when we do a sound check rehearsal, I try and be very efficient. I have to have my stuff together to communicate that to the band, because if I beat up the band in a rehearsal, they're not going to have any energy for the show. And I think a band plays better when they kind of know what they're going to be doing, but if there's a little bit of a surprise edge, they're going to be very aware, and you're going to put that up. So that's the behind the scenes stuff. Yes, I send out some more challenging music. I might say, hey, take a look at this passage here, get this under your fingers, or get this under your fingers, okay? But fortunately, we're hiring folks that can deal with this music and want to play this music, because, go ahead, if it's a gig, I'm available. A very reasonable price. Maybe. But if I take care of that business on the bandstand, that's going to enable me, when the curtain opens up, or when they say the one and only Tommy Dorsey, we can go. And that's going to be energy and connection with the folks. And then if you have a bandstand full of people who are playing with some energy and want to do that thing, that makes what I have to do very enjoyable, hopefully. And things get messed up on the bandstand, and you have to be able to go with that. I learned that. I worked for 2 years with, in my opinion, one of the greatest entertainers. His name was Harry Connick Jr. And I'd see him go for stuff on the bandstand. It might not have worked, but he figured out a way to get around it, and I stole a lot from him. Don't tell him that, because then I'll own some money. But all those type of things are kind of some of my philosophy.
I led the band a couple of times. First time we were on a cruise ship, Larry's mother passed away. And Paul Tanner was giving speeches about whatever, promoting his book. I was terrified when Larry asked me to lead the band for a few days, because I knew what we were doing, but getting up and presenting, and counting off tunes and back and forth and all of this, it is a lot to think about. And you have to think ahead, in my opinion. You got to think ahead of what you're going to be doing when you're playing saxophone. You got to stand up. You got to count off a tune. Maybe talk on a mic. Maybe not talk on a mic for a few tunes. And Nick subbed for Nick a handful of times, and just recently Eric. And you get the hang of. I'm getting the hang of it. But yeah, that first couple of nights, man, boy, I was on my toes. And a little nervous, how am I going to present this? Well, just think about what Larry did, and think about what you did, think about what you did. Now, they all have different styles of what they're doing. And, so I learned a lot from them, and I'm just getting more comfortable. But it is a tremendous amount of things to be thinking about at once and thinking ahead,
It's a secret.
Actually, what Dan was saying is really good. It makes me think about things that Larry would say. He did say, the only time that you really should turn your back on the audience is if you are actively conducting, and so that's a very good thing. It's funny. There's I'm mental, I guess, but I would think of being up here as if you have a string that's tied to you, and you should never make that string go around you once. Always, if you face the audience, make sure that you don't turn around and make that string tie around your feet, this imaginary string around you. Make sure that you bring the audience back to wherever you were originally. These are just crazy things that are in my head. But one thing that I learned from Larry, I remember it was probably my first year on the road. The band had an interlude during a tune. I put my hands in my pockets, and Larry said, I won't tell you what he said. He just basically said, take your hands out of your pockets. But, those types of things exude. Now, I've seen the greats put their hands in their pockets, Sinatra or whatever, but a lot of times that was on film, or for a TV show, or it had a purpose. But it does kind of exude more confidence, if you don't do those things. I did see a video recently. Leonard Bernstein was doing like a teaching session, and the student was conducting, and Bernstein had him stop and said something like, these guys know that you made a mistake. Don't play like you didn't. Own up to it, because they'll respect you more. Instead of pretending like you think you know what you're doing, you can own up to some of your mistakes. Say, that was on me, and then, charge ahead. You want to gain the respect of the musicians. And like Dan was saying, you have an audience that is this. You're the reason why this music's being made.
One of the benefits of being with the Glenn Miller Orchestra is that we play so many shows. Part of this job for me has been a process of repetition. Starting out, it was a challenge, and I've been doing this for 4 years now as music director. So there is some amount of repetition, and I think regardless of how prepared I was for the job when I began, it is something that you learn and something you get better at, and I think that's been one of the fabulous things about being on this band and working so much. And one more small point, I think everyone has said this in their own way, but finding a way to do what's in the best interest of the musicians on the band is really beneficial, whether that's something in a rehearsal scenario or something in a show, or working with them in a way that you find most effective is really useful. And the personnel on the Glenn Miller Orchestra changes, so the way that I work with this band might be different than the way that I worked with the band 4 years ago. So I think keeping the musicians in their best interest in mind is big as well.
Yeah, so in general, whether you're a leader or a side man, whatever it is, it's how prepared you are for that gig. Especially if you're a leader and you want to gain everybody's respect, you kind of have to set the example. You have to be a little bit better than everybody else. Or as a road manager, I knew that I needed to be on the bus before everybody else. I needed to set that tone. So it's the same thing for music. I know that if I want to be respected, I need to show up and have my act together. So that's the main thing. That and thinking about, a lot of musicians don't think about delivering something to the audience, especially sidemen. They should think, they play their part well, great, okay. But the ones that stick out are the ones, like you heard Kazu last night. That's right, let's hear it for him. He comes to the front of the bandstand and he's saying something to the audience. That's really a big deal, so strive for that.
Okay, folks, we're going to have time for one more question, so we're going to have lunch time before.
I don't have a question, I just want to make a comment about some of our panel.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I don't have a microphone, can you hear me?
Let's go way over there. Because we were going to get a question from over there. It's way over there.
I have no question, I just wanted to comment about something.
We can hear you, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
I've been coming here for quite a few years. In fact, this is my 33rd year. And every Saturday night when I leave this town, I'm almost so sad. And all my friends, we're almost sick because it's a whole year before we ever get to do this 1% again. So first of all, I'm going to talk about him. He had to give up, I said, there'll never be another Nick. And he comes every year in beautiful force. He comes here to celebrate and to end, and I think that's wonderful. Because I thought we were never going to do music and run over with this band. Then here comes this wonderful young kid Billy. And so when he got out of that bandstand and the kid, he's running here, he's starting the band, then he's running there and he's singing and he's sitting down and he's picking up the sack. If you watch him, he's moving and comes and the harmony, I sing harmony myself, so I know harmony. And when the group sounds, they are absolutely wonderful, just wonderful. And you can't say enough for us, really. And that young singer, she's going to be good. She really is. She's got a wonderful, she's going to be great. I couldn't believe how good she was, really. She's wonderful. She's going to be wonderful, really is all the time. So, but we just love you so much. And there's so much a part of this festival. Even though, and we love it coming every year. So please keep coming, because we love it. Love to see you. Love to see you.
Anyway, get everybody to lunch. So who's got first dibs? Well, you got the microphone, so you get it.
I get it. Eric, we saw you in Prescott, Arizona recently, and it's wonderful. Of course, that every time you play is wonderful. And we see some transitions. So I was just curious, how's the process for transitions, which are inevitable, and what that must be like to go through?
Yeah, the personnel changes on a yearly basis on this band. Some members have been on for decades, and some members are brand new. This particular band on stage last night is a lot of new members. I think there's myself, the section leaders, Jason on bass trombone, and otherwise it's all new folks. Which is great. The band's personality changes when new musicians join, and that's, I think, a great thing. Every band sounds a little bit different, and this particular group is awesome. It's a bunch of young folks. They're extremely talented, maybe among the most talented group of musicians I've performed with the Glen Miller Orchestra. And that's just kind of how it goes. When someone leaves the band, we have to find a replacement, sometimes in short order, and I think we've been very lucky to have a great bunch of musicians.
You guys, we done? Anybody else want to comment on that? They don't? All right, now look, got a quick lunch break and back here at 1 o'clock for the next thing. I would like to say something we really appreciate. I had to dragoon some of them into it, but it's okay. Seriously, I think we've all learned a tremendous amount from these guys today, and let's give them all a real big round of applause. Thank you so much. Always a lot of fun, and it might get to becoming a permanent thing, I don't know. Please. All right, thanks folks, we'll see you about at 1 o'clock.